ourselves to make them. And this has been a long, slow journey with lots of twists. We've built multiple generations of hardware, none of which until recently we thought was actually worth trying to produce and sell. So I've got 3 different generations here. Our design objective originally was to do something similar to a 41, and so this particular calculator is actually running firmware from an older HP, predating even the 41, and this was built using a microchip PIC microcontroller, and I'll pass this around. Unfortunately, I'm missing the overlay that has the legends, so I don't expect anybody to be able to do a whole lot with this, but I'll start that around. And at one point, so we switched to an ARM processor that's a lot more capable, and also at one point we found this very nice large graphic display, the 400 by 240 resolution, which was alluded to in the 43S presentation. And we got it, and it's an expensive display, relatively speaking, but it looks beautiful, and so we just, Rich was dubious at first, and we got a sample and tried it out, and it's lovely. And so actually we first used it in this one, and this was designed to use a character display like that, but we've put in a kludge board that allowed us to use the graphic display to test it. And so this particular calculator is running HP41 emulation, and it's essentially the 41CX code, but it's been modified to be capable of showing the entire 4-level stack in RPN. So I'll pass that around as well. But at a previous conference, I did some market research, and I asked how many people, if they were interested in buying a new scientific calculator, how many would be more interested in a 41 versus a 42? And the answer then was overwhelmingly 42. So let me ask that again, and you have to only vote for one or the other. How many people here, if they were going to buy a new high-end scientific, would like a 41-based calculator?
Well, wait, can we assume that it would be at least the same memory or more and faster? Because the biggest problem for me for 41 is so slow.
Well,
no, the question is it expandable?
So if it's a 41, it may be somewhat faster. It'll be because it'll be running the 41 microcode. It'll pretty much be limited in how much online memory, but perhaps there'll be more extended memory, and there certainly would be more I/O, like the SD card, so you'd be able to have files on the SD card. Yes.
You compare that to the 41CL. CL is already like the next generation.
Well, that's true. You're welcome to consider that in your decision. So because I don't want to take up too much time. I've only got 20 minutes here. So just show of hands, how many people might be interested in a...
One more question. The
yes?
screen on the 41 version is going to be 1 line or...
It would be the 4-line.
Oh.
So there's 2 things we're voting, 41 or 42, right?
Right. Well, all right. Let me hold the vote for a minute. So the 42. What we did is we took Thomas Ocken's free 42 that runs on PCs and phones and things, and managed to get it running on our hardware. But we also modified that to have a multi-line display. And this actually has about an 8-line display, so it shows the 4-level RPN stack. And when you go into program mode, it can show 7 lines of the program that you're editing instead of just 1 or 2. So it's really a lot nicer for program editing. And I'll also point out, Free 42 was designed for, to mimic the original resolution of the HP 42 display. So it's much lower pixel count than what we have. And so this is just blowing up the pixels by a factor of 3 on each axis. So this is only showing off 1/9 of the display resolution. Now with this WP43 that's under consideration, it would be able to use the whole display resolution. But anyhow, so I'll pass that around too. But really, I'm just trying to get a sense of, are people basically more interested in a slightly enhanced 41 or a much enhanced 42? And when I state it that way, the answer seems obvious. But still, how many people? The 41 based one preserves all of the software, so it can run a lot of the same things that 41CL can. It can run all the old ROMs, including microcode ROMs and so forth. The 42 only is going to do 42 user language.
Would you add a checksum?
If you're nice.
That was the biggest problem with 42, because you didn't have a checksum function, and you key in the program, and then you don't know if it's right or not.
It's potential that it could be added, but certainly there isn't one right now. So is there much interest in
Yeah,
41?
doesn't have it either, right?
41 with the
That's right.
ROMs,
Sure.
yes. If you can,
Okay.
like, games
And versus how many people are interested in enhanced 42? Okay, so it's still a lot more. Okay. So
That's about a 43.
well, so the thing is, our hardware will support the 43, but the 43, as Jake said, right now is just the development that Walter's done on what the specs are, and he's put in a lot of work, and it's looks really nice, but it's entirely vaporware at the moment. That spec is the only thing that exists. So some people, which may or may not include me in the future, some people, for that to come into existence, will have to write all that firmware. And it's a fun project, and I would like to do it, but I have a lot of demands on my time. So that's why the title of this talk was The Glacial Pace of Scaled Reptiles. Scaled Reptiles referring to the titles of my earlier talks, that the chip that's in this is called a giant gecko from a company in Norway. So scaled reptiles of the Nordic countries. Yes?
And earlier in this weekend, you had discussed the fact that the 41 type machine had a key arrangement like the 41 with only the number of 37 keys. For the 42 like machine had 43 keys.
That's correct. We added one row more of keys than the 42 has because I wanted to have the soft keys be dedicated to being soft keys and not have to sometimes serve as some other function and sometimes as soft keys. That was one of the things about soft keys that always irritated me on some of the calculators.
I would be concerned if a 41 version came out and the key count was lower, which might.
The 41 version would have the same key count as the 41.
Right, and that would constrain, if there was only one version and it was the 41 version, it would obviously constrain development
There was
So-
no
so-
in the direction of a 43S.
So, well, all right. So the hardware is nearly identical. The key matrix is really the only, and the positioning of the keys is really the only thing different in the hardware. Part of the reason that if we did a 41, that it wouldn't have more keys and a lot of other fancy features is that then we would basically have to throw away the 41 ROMs and throw away compatibility with 41 ROM images. So the intention, aside from hacking it for that 4-level stack display, the intention was to try to maintain very high compatibility with 41. Now the ones I've passed around, the one that's running free 42, you'll see is a very slim design compared to our earlier ones, which were thicker and hence more boxy. And probably, Rich is a big fan of the slim design. He did that packaging, but the what I'm thinking we'll probably do is do a 3D printed case initially. Well, not initially, but at some point do a 3D printed case, and it'll probably be more wedge shaped because what I want to do is use AA batteries, use a pair of AA's instead of lithium coin cells. So it won't be as slim, and as has been pointed out, having it thicker does impact the ability to use it one-handed. Now, outside of this, I don't know how many people in this room like to use their calculator one-handed. Outside this room, it's basically no one. So, Rich Otteson and I. Everyone we talk to and we say this idea of one-handed, everybody looks at us like we're insane.
If you look at any young person, which is everybody compared to me, but they operate their smartphone.
Oh no, they operate everything with two thumbs.
Oh,
Oh, it's two.
yes, we do this, yeah.
For sure.
So let me pass around
I
one
know
more.
what you mean by one heck, but I do that with my 48 all the time.
I have no idea how he does it on the phone.
So everybody always wants to know the status. So I'm embarrassed to say that not too much has changed since my presentation last year, in the sense that we had a lot of tasks involved in preparing to build hardware. We had a few hardware changes in the electronics, and we've worked on those. We haven't accomplished as much as I would like. When I left the conference last year, it was my intention to actually have enough prototype units built to have sent them to the firmware developers for 43S firmware development. As of today, that has not happened. What has happened is we in trying to prepare for this, we purchased all of the components to build 10 units, and Rich has worked on the PC layout, and we are just about to send the PC board out to fab. And these 10 units will be hand assembled like the ones that I've sent around. We're not yet prepared to have a commercial assembly house do them. There's some issues with that we're not prepared to address right now. So they'll be hand assembled. The intention is that we will send 3 units to the team that developed 34S, and we hope will develop 43S. The unit that runs Free42, that's based, as I said, on Thomas Aaken's Free42 software, and so we are going to send him 1 unit, and the remaining units we're going to hold on to for continued development on our part. But what we intend to do probably in the spring is to make a limited number of units available for sale. Those units for sale will be very similar to the one that I passed around, the slim one that's running Free42. They will have the folded Mylar case, so just so nobody has unrealistic expectations, it won't be a 3D printed case, it won't be an injection molded case. It'll be considered a developmental prototype, except that we will sell it. And we won't commit to any support other than if you get it and its DOA will replace it and maybe offer a small warranty. So we're not going to promise that if you buy one of those from us that we will sell you an improved case for it. It's our intention to be able to do that in the future. We just can't make long-term commitments because from experience we know that everything takes us a lot longer than we expect. So the other bad news, I've mentioned this in previous years, we probably are not going to be able to offer it for a retail price of less than about $299. So it is an expensive calculator. People, every time I say that, people get upset about it and say, "Oh, I've got a cell phone, I can just use that," and that's perfectly true. And we're hoping that 43S will run on your cell phone. Free42 already does. This is intended for people that want a physical calculator with physical buttons. For me and Rich Otteson, this is the same idea as being able to operate one-handed. There's no way in hell you can operate your cell phone calculator one-handed while you're looking at something and writing something because you can't feel where the buttons are. The whole purpose of this is a physical device. If other software that does run on phones results from this, then that's a great bonus, but it's not our driving intention. Moving further down the line, we do intend to do 3D printed cases. One of them, I think I passed around one that's the earlier model that's in a 3D printed case.
The white one.
Yeah, the white one. And that was my first attempt at printing anything non-trivial with a 3D printer. And I'm not super happy how it turned out, but in terms of being a first effort, I didn't think it was too bad. So I'm still learning. I used SolidWorks to design that, and I printed that particular one on a commercial 3D printer, which is extremely expensive. I own a more of a hobby grade 3D printer, and I'm experimenting with that. But one of the things I learned is having a copy of SolidWorks does not make a person an industrial designer any more than having a copy of Photoshop makes someone a professional photographer. It just doesn't work that way. There's a huge learning curve. So that's all I've got. If there are any questions.
Is there anything in the Walter's latest specs that's not consistent with the?
I have not had a chance to read the spec. So today,
well, what you saw out there, I mean, the resolution, all that is all still very consistent.
I believe so. Yes. The 43S, to the best of my knowledge, came about entirely because I suggested to those guys that Rich and I were building some new hardware that would have a nicer display, and would they be interested in? I just suggested, would they be interested in improving WP34S to take advantage of that? And the answer to that was 34S was so constrained by the limits of the 20B and the 30B hardware that they really, although they would use ideas from 34S, that they really kind of wanted a clean slate design on the software.
Is that industrial prototype 42? Will that be a stable version of 42?
Okay, so it'll run the Free42 software. There is an issue. Free42 was written kind of from the infinite memory perspective. On a desktop or on a cell phone, you have an immense amount of memory, and so you can write software that's relatively wasteful with how it uses memory, and allocates and frees memory all the time, even for little tiny things like stack entries. as a consequence, on our limited memory hardware, which we have 128 kbytes of RAM, now that's 64 times as much battery-backed RAM as a 20B or 30B had, but over time, if you use it, the memory can become fragmented to the point where it's no longer able to allocate space for a new program line, or worst case, even for a stack level. Even though the memory is there, it's just in tiny little pieces scattered all around. If you save the entire calculator state to a file, for instance on the SD card, and then load it back in, that solves that problem. What I'm considering doing as another means of solving that is the prototypes have some FRAM built in. FRAM is a non-volatile memory, kind of like flash, except that it is byte writable and fast and high endurance, 10 to the 14th cycles endurance, whereas flash is usually in the 10 or 100,000 range. The FRAM is fairly expensive. We would actually like to remove it, but if we have it there, then Free42, we're thinking about every time you press the off button, having it write the entire calculator state into that FRAM. When you turn it back on again, have it read it, and that would automatically, effectively defragment the memory, so that you're a lot less likely to run into this, this memory fragmentation problem. What I don't know yet is how long that would take. When you turn it off, that's not too big of a problem because you just blank the display, and if it's still sitting there thinking, writing the stuff into the FRAM, well, who cares? But when you turn it on, you want it to be available immediately, and so if loading that in takes any length of time, that would be bad. So I still have to experiment with that. But as I say, so the intent is if somebody buys the calculator running Free42 from us in the spring, that they will, if everything comes together well, the expectation is they would be able to upgrade it to WP43 in the future when that becomes available. Of course, there's no guarantees it will become available, but I'm saying optimistically we expect that will exist at some point in the future. Obviously, Walter's put in a lot of work on it, and it will take a lot more work yet. But in the meantime, they'll have something that works that has Free42. And there'll be some caveats, like I say, because Free42 wasn't really intended to run on a physical calculator with very limited memory. Okay. Come see me later.